Hello, I'm here today with Erwin von Doelling, Technology Management Executive, bridging the gap between business and technology, currently operating in multi-metals processing industry. Hello, Erwin.
Hello, Piotr, and thank you for having me.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to have you. Thank you very much for being here. I would like to start with a very simple question. How does this industrial digital transformation apply to you?
I think it applies to all companies, all industries. And I can think like every business, we consistently have to be remaining competitive and evolving our companies and our businesses as the priorities evolve. And what's very clearly happening is, from a technology point of view, we've matured technology radically over the past 20, 30 years. And there is a lot of technology embedded in many industrial companies, but a lot of that technology is not necessarily technology that is ready to be easily incorporated in a digital world. And it specifically applies to the industries where I work in, because we want to harvest more of the data and the information, but a lot of that data is available in systems that were never designed or architected to be connected globally across networks. They were isolated standalone systems with that thinking, and to harvest that needs to be done with a lot of due diligence and planned carefully, so as to maintain the security of those systems, as well as the integrity and confidentiality of the data.
Okay, so if you have actually touched already a few key points that I would like to address as well, because my second question would be, so what kind of challenges do you currently see in this industrial transformation?
I see challenges in multiple aspects. So let's deal with a few of them. I see challenges from a timing point of view and a time pressure point of view. It's become quite well understood that there's a lot of data, especially in large corporations and large multinational corporations. There's a lot of data in different departments at different sites in countries, and that data is not yet being completely utilized, or actually to a large degree is not utilized enough. And for those companies, they want to use the data more to develop information out of it. That implies getting the data out of those systems. And because of the time pressure, you've got teams who are technical people wanting to do their best and simply connecting devices and giving the data without realizing the potential implications they have from a cyber threat perspective or an operational stability perspective in doing so. And I think the challenges there are, one, to have the business understand the implications and consider them as real concerns, and the other aspect, having the technical teams able to explain that it is possible, that they do want to make the data available and harvest the information, however, with taking the necessary steps to do so carefully and in a way that does not put the whole operation at risk. So I think those two tensions are becoming more prevalent today than they've been in the past. We've had the tensions already in the 1990s when I started my career as an engineer working on PLCs and SCADA systems and security systems. Those tensions existed, however, not so much at the time. Back in the 90s, we were lucky if sites were connected with wide area networks in a country. Nowadays, it's normal that all sites are connected, not only within the country, but internationally. So we've got that pressure and speed from what is theoretically possible and what business people want to use versus what is practically available and possible without too much risk. And of course, those two tensions are pushing on each other. And sometimes the technical teams allow themselves to be put under pressure, make decisions, and then live with the implications afterwards. And I think that will become more and more the case.
Okay, so if I may, I would like to categorize it a bit into a few different areas, because you have mentioned it on a a bit wider spectrum. So one of the things that you have mentioned would be mindset, simply. So the mindset, how how organizations and people within organizations are dealing with sharing the information. The more information we have, the more difficult it is for them to operate on this, for example, sets of data. The other aspect is the security of the data, which you have also mentioned. So maybe I would like to go firstly with this like, let's call it people's approach. So how do organizations like cope with that? There's a term that there should be convergence between IT and operations. Is it also your role currently to work in that area?
Yes, currently I do have the IT-OT convergence happening in my own department, my own company, and that definitely has become a trending approach. It's nothing new. We spoke about IT and OT being more synergized again in the 90s and the 2000s. However, there was a lot more concern back then for the security, in my opinion. Or possibly back then the assessment of IT people was that they were not competent enough, so no chance. I think now that's developed much more, and there is more convergence, and I believe there will be more and more convergence. Now, I don't think it is going to be like what happened to the PABX. Voice over IP basically made the PABX extinct. I don't think IT will make OT extinct. That's two very different worlds, but they will converge and they will need to coexist much more effectively. The people themselves, the two professionals, in my opinion, IT people versus OT people, they're both highly committed people, and they definitely want the best for the business. They want the best technically. However, they have very different pressures and they come from very different backgrounds. OT people are very concerned about the accuracy of the data and the integrity of the data. When a sensor says that the temperature is 873 Celsius, it has to be 873 Celsius because you're making decisions about the temperature or the pressure, etc., based upon that reading. Whereas in IT, the focus is much more on the confidentiality of the data and who's allowed to see the data. And in IT, the people believe that the data is the data, garbage in, garbage out, good data in, good data out. They don't care about the integrity as much of the data. And in OT, the focus is also very much on the high availability of systems and avoiding any outage, which is a good thing. Now, IT's come a long way from high availability, and IT services today are very, very high available, and they constantly become more and more high available. With the microservices that are now part of the offering, you definitely have a higher availability and self-healing systems. On the OT side, and a lot of these OT thinking processes were being developed in the 90s and 2000, it was high availability at all costs. And there was no concern that you had to do a controlled shutdown of the server. If the system crashed, it crashed. And as soon as power is available, it must come online again and it must work. So the architectures put in place facilitated those things, but they did not facilitate necessarily keeping the data confidential and safe to threats. And with the cyber security concerns we have from an IT perspective and an internet perspective, that definitely is an area that puts tension between the two teams. Now, at the same time, OT people know a lot about PLCs, SCADA systems, distributed control systems, how they work, the sensors, the cabling, the networks between those systems. But again, they are very local area production networks. Their knowledge, I think, is not so strong on server architectures, proper LAN architecting, firewalling. And they understand the concepts, but the engineering part is lacking, and they can get that from the IT team. So I don't think it is one team replaces the other, but it's very much working together as a team to find the best approach.
But would you agree with a statement that, especially now in the era of IoT, when every device is connected and every data is available almost in real time, this topic has become even more important than ever, because I agree fully that the topic of IT-OT convergence is an old one. It's from the 90s, 2000s. However, in the moment that we are now, when there's so much data available, when there's so much data that needs processing, this has become again a key point in planning, simply also of introduction of new systems as well.
I fully agree with you, and you could even argue that IoT, if it lived in a new world based upon an IoT framework that had considered all of these security aspects, and the framework was mature, and we could replace all of the legacy architecture, legacy hardware, the problems would be solved. In theory, I still have my doubts that the IoT frameworks today are well enough defined to be appropriately secure. And I still think we're learning, but absolutely the IoT addition to it makes it much more complex. And the architectural questions will come of, do you use IoT connected to your company network, to your on-site environment networks, or do you connect it directly to the internet with 5G? And then you harvest the data out of the internet. And possibly that will be the safer step first, because it's designed for a 5G environment and an internet framework. However, then you still want to maybe use some of your existing data as well as your new IoT data. And how do you bring those two together? Because I don't believe companies will simply be able to replace all of their operational technology. It is significant investments that often get made with an investment life of 20 to 30 years.
Exactly. I would totally agree, because now when you are designing a new system, it not only has to fit within the current solutions that are working within the organizations, because well, those digital systems, they are not new. There are already a lot of them operating. But if we are inventing a new one, it also has to fit to the current like architecture, current solution that is shared within the organization. I would like to touch a bit a different aspect, because you've mentioned 5G, you've mentioned security as well, and those two and IoT actually as well. Those two topics correlate with another topic being very, very trendy lately, which is cloud. But cloud is not actually being understood as the most secure way of storing data. In that case, do you think that is there a solution in private cloud, for example, in hosting your private cloud environment?
I think it's very, very contextual and depends on the situation. I definitely believe that there is value at having your own private cloud, especially from a hybrid point of view, going to a open cloud or public cloud direction. I don't think you can simply make the leap from where we are today to the public cloud. There is a lot of value in the public cloud, and we already see that value coming through services like Microsoft 365 for email or Gmail for email. And we see a lot of the cloud services being available like Amazon Web Services, and using that as a platform for developing solutions and scaling very well. All of the microservices in the cloud is highly scalable, and that offers a great benefit. But again, the only way you can bridge the old world with all of these new world opportunities is through potentially having your own, you can call it private cloud. What is private cloud more than really an effective IT global data center of your own that's under your own control, connected to your own wide area networks? That's all a private cloud really is. What's much more interesting is, how do you bridge this private cloud with the public cloud, and you get the benefit of both worlds? Public cloud has proven its value already in certain cases. I still believe it still has to prove its value in cases for ERP. I still believe that the storage in the public cloud for certain ERP solutions is not yet competitive enough yet. But that's again on the S-curve of the new service. And it is a new available technology, has a lot of benefits, and it will mature in the next 2 to 3 years without a doubt. And long term, more and more things will go into cloud services. There's no doubt about that. From a vision point of view, and we had that vision internally 7 years ago in this company, it was very clear that we wanted to be able to be more versatile and have more optionality on the market. And we made sure that we had our core infrastructure for our systems and our ERP available with web services, a SOAP architecture, so that we could, whenever we want, integrate with other platforms through interfaces. Mm-hmm. And I definitely think that that is the right step to go. And one day, maybe in 20 years from now, everything will be public cloud services. We'll see how we get there, because I still think we're learning and evolving.
I would like to actually a bit follow up on this topic, because what I'm interested in is also, how do you introduce new solutions with all of those possibilities that we have just named to an organization, to such well-established, also probably process-heavy organizations? So what is the process? What are the steps there?
So the approach we take is that we first try and identify what is the requirement, what is the real need and objective, what are we trying to solve? And that gets done by requirements analysis. And requirements analysis needs to become a lot more rigorous, and you have to do a lot deeper understanding of the requirements and validate them with your business.
I totally agree. So from our perspective, quality of requirements directly simply results in quality of systems. So that would be, I assume, this step one.
So that's step one. Once you've got your requirements and you've assessed what's available internally, what's available externally, what the benefits are, and you want to introduce a new platform, you need to know what is the architecture. What are you going to use from a data architecture internally? What is the networking architecture to support that? What is also the process architecture, the actual business processes that are operating using those technologies, so that you can map out all of the interconnecting points. One thing with all of this additional cloud possibilities, IoT possibilities, is that the landscape becomes much more complex. Mm-hmm. And that complexity cannot be simply now managed in someone's mind. Well, maybe some people are clever enough to manage the complexity in their mind, but when you want to be sustainable, you probably want to have more than some people who can manage the complexity, and you want many people to talk about it. So you have to have reference diagrams, reference material. And if you don't have that reference material, and you do have an incident or a crisis, and you need to start doing some analysis or troubleshooting, recovery from failure, life's a lot more difficult without that documentation that should be built when doing the proper architecting of the solutions.
I totally agree. Also, keeping in mind what you have just mentioned before, the solutions that we are building right now, that these are the solutions that we expect for them to be operating for the next 10, 15, 20 years. Well documented, well established, good in terms of quality as well. Solutions are also easier to scale and develop further in the future. But this is also, I would like to go into a bit different direction here, because you have also mentioned that some of those problems are so complex that we are not able to solve them by our own. Does that mean that in some cases we should look for like external help? Do you, for example, have experience in not only making software, making IT solutions, but also buying them?
Yes, I do have experience with that, and I definitely believe that there is such a rapid rate of change in technology over the past decade that you cannot know everything and you cannot specialize in everything. What's going to be very clear for me going forward, and it's become very obvious the past 5 years, is that the IT, OT personnel working inside of companies will have to be very, very versatile people. Versatile technically, versatile from a people skills perspective, soft skills. They'll have to be well-rounded in being able to help with understanding requirements, defining specifications, working on architecture diagrams and architectures of solutions. However, to build the solution, the specialist knowledge you require is not scalable to have only in-house. You will need to identify your trusted partners to help you on developing those solutions, specialists in different fields, whether it's going to be specialists in containers and microservices, specialists in new development languages, people who know JSON and Python and can use all of those benefits, querying machine language. To build that capability inside, theoretically is possible. However, one, you increase your cost significantly. Two, you cannot guarantee that you will require those specialists in your own company, and you will not keep them satisfied, because as soon as they have no work that is interesting for them, they will get bored and they will leave. Or at least that's what I would have done. So from that perspective, I think it's much better to have a model where you buy in the skills you need. What we've done is we have set up a process to help us, and it's basically an end-to-end solution delivery process. And it is identifying what are the needs, doing the requirements analysis, developing the functional specification internally, keeping that strategic architecture solution design internally, and then working with partners to develop the technical specifications for us, price them, we validate the specifications, approve or do not approve the budget, manage the project, and managing the way that we're also willing to accept killing a project if we see that it is not going to be viable, or if it is going to not achieve what the business case parameters were, and eventually deliver.
May I interrupt you here and ask, because you've mentioned that you use help of external partners in some cases, and how do you select the right external partner for transformation projects?
So let's not talk about it as a transformation project, because the word transformation project could be transformation in culture. It could be transformation in organizational setup. So let's say that you've already got a focus on being more digital as an organization, and you want to do respective projects to facilitate that program, that direction. Then you need to have partners. And what we've done specifically is we've looked for partners in the area of application development and maintenance support. And that partner helps take care of our existing application landscape and is the first point of refusal for future opportunities. So we've agreed with that partner that they will always have the opportunity to bid for any projects, but if they do not have the skill set or competence, we have the right to look for somebody else to keep the partnership healthy and the trust high. The way we selected that partner is we went through a very, very rigorous process of defining our RFP. We very clearly specified the way the processes would be, what the partner's requirements are from an obligations point of view. We created RACEs very clearly on what the partner is responsible for, what we as a customer are responsible for, and we actively track those obligations and deliverables. If you do not spend the time upfront very clearly defining what you want to do with a partner and how you want to operate, then it's very hard to be successful in a partner ecosystem environment. Mm-hmm. If you do that upfront work and you define it well, it becomes easier. It is never easy because everybody, of course, works in their frameworks, and everybody, whether it's a vendor or a customer, you have different pressures, different objectives. And of course, you both want to be successful, but you have to help set that success up. And of course, there will be challenging moments and there will be challenges to deal with. But if you build up trust with that partner, you'll be able to easily manage through those challenges, or more easily manage through those challenges. So in your RFP selection process of a partner, I would say know clearly what you want. And secondly, choose the partner you believe that you have the better connection with and you believe you have more trust that you can build with it.
I totally agree that trust is something that is built over time, that it's built over by overcoming challenges, by successes, by failures. But there is one aspect that I think that you have not mentioned, and that is very interesting, because how do you draw the line between the things that your partner is responsible for and something that you identify as core business, let's call it? So in other words, how do you know how deep to let those partners simply into your business? It's your domain, it's your know-how.
So we, or at least I, always aim to keep the strategic thinking of the company internally. That does not mean that I do not let the partners engage with us and let them participate in those conversations. However, I draw the line very clearly that the internal resources are the ones that actually get to agree and define with the business what the direction will be. And the partners there are supporting us, partnering with us. Also, what I've always done, and I really believe this is a valuable way of setting up working with partners, especially outsourcing models, I always have onshore presence in the team of the outsourcing partner. And the outsourcing partner manages their own glue. So they keep their offshore resources in sync and glued in through having the onshore resources. Otherwise, the internal people, instead of focusing on business priorities and the business strategic advantages and defining solutions and architectures for the business, they spend their time trying to coordinate the partner resources, which is not the objective. And that model has worked very well for me. Just trying to think a little bit more about choosing partners and building trust and where the line is. The line for me is very much on the functional specification. What is the business process? Mapping out the end-to-end business process and being able to then challenge if that business process has all the necessary control points, if that business process is potentially has waste inside of the process, and lean out the processes more and more. Identify which technologies could nowadays automate other parts of the process that were not automatable before. I think those are the things internally. Once you've got that functional specification done, then I think you can easily give it to a partner to help you build technical specifications. And of course, you have to validate it. Now, having a partner never means that you can abdicate responsibility. That's always your responsibility in your company to own whatever you are designing and whatever you are proposing. That's definitely a clear delineator. Organizations where the IT, OT organization says, I have abdicated that to the partner. I'm not sure. I'm not responsible for that. I believe that they're very close to the end of their tenure in that organization.
Well, thank you for your answer, Erwin. That was like really, really deep, I would say. I would like to ask you something different now, and this is actually a moment where I would like to go more into like this vision direction. So where do you see this industrial transformation is going right now? So what are the next steps that you would identify in the following like 5 or 10 years?
It's a very interesting question. It's not an easy question to answer, but one, I would say I find it a very, very exciting time. It's a really interesting time for a person like me, who has always played between technology and business. And fortunately, I have both the IT and the OT schooling in my formation. So the direction I see this going in is also a direction that's going to change, in my opinion, over the next 3 to 5 to 10 years. There is radical technology development happening at a pace that is constantly getting faster. There is a strong amount of willingness to try and fail in new technologies, much more than 20 years ago, much more now than 10 years ago, and it will be much more than 3 years ago. Which means that you will try certain technologies, some of them will become great solutions, and others will fail or will no longer be available, and you'll have to migrate away. So the view that I have is that for the next 5 to 10 years, people should expect that IT-OT convergence will get more and more. There will be rework. It's not clear yet what's going to work, what's going to fail. I believe it's going to go much more in the direction of microservices. I think that that is going to give a lot of flexibility and scalability to many solutions. I also believe that many people in the IT-OT world don't yet fully understand what this microservices environment is, what it means, and how to benefit from it. I think a lot of us, maybe like me, are still thinking in client-server architectures, getting away from mainframes, then going to having terminals and Citrix services. And I think a lot of us have to learn about microservices, and I encourage everybody to go and understand it and learn about it. Again, it's nothing new. It's a concept from the Unix days, and it's just reapplying that and taking advantage of the cloud, the internet that everything's connected to. But I do think that that will give scalability. Again, it won't replace everything. I think it's an incredibly interesting time for people who want to be specialists and go very deep into certain areas like machine learning, data analytics, web services. Those technical specialists, I think, will just have more and more areas to specialize and focus in and grow. And for people inside of companies, IT, OT people inside of companies, I think they will be having a lot of time working on upskilling to be more versatile, to be able to have more conversations with the business about business processes, understanding the business value, understanding also the risks. And there the IT, OT people will need to also very much think about risk versus value and understand the data security risks, understand network security risks, understand operating system risks, browser risks. And these are things that traditionally in IT, different teams used to look after. But as all of this happens and you move to a partner-based model, you'll require fewer people internally with broader knowledge. And it's a good opportunity to continue becoming more versatile and understanding technology as a whole and managing technology. And I think very much companies will move to managing technology instead of trying to develop and execute their own technology. They will manage technology that is available and use partners to help them build what's appropriate, and then manage the life cycle after that.
Erwin, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for your insights. I believe it was all very interesting, and I was really happy to have you today during our interview. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Piotr.
Have a nice rest of the day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.